Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our book talk this month for The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. An amazing, amazing book from an amazing woman. I'm Felicia Durden, and I am happy to facilitate this conversation tonight as we go through Michelle's latest book. All right, so just a short intro. Michelle Obama is from Chicago, and she was born January 17th, so her birthday was not that long ago. 64 was the year she was born in. She's a very intelligent woman, an attorney. She attended Princeton University and Harvard Law. And of course, we know her as the First Lady of the United States. I wanted to show a short video clip of a really neat biography that I found on Michelle Obama, just to kind of get us into the spirit as we get ready to delve more into her fabulous new book. So if you guys just bear with me one quick moment, and I'll click on the right link. Okay, this is the right one. All right, here we go.
Michelle Obama is the first African-American First Lady. She will always go down in history for that, and she will always be seen as a pioneer for others to follow.
Born Michelle LaVaughn Robinson on January 17, 1964 in Chicago, Michelle Obama was raised in a blue-collar home on Chicago's South Side. She went to Princeton University in 1981 and then on to law school after her college graduation.
After she graduated from Harvard Law School in 1988, Michelle Obama moved back to her hometown of Chicago, where she began working at a law firm.
She was assigned to be a mentor to a young summer intern named Barack Obama, who then decided he wanted to ask her out on a date. As his mentor, Michelle thought that was inappropriate, but eventually she did relent, and they ultimately married on October 3rd, 1992.
Michelle Obama left corporate law to work in the public sector in 1991. She briefly worked as assistant to Chicago Mayor Richard Daley, and later started a nonprofit to help train people for careers in public service. She became an associate dean at the University of Chicago in 1996, and then a vice president at the University Medical Center in 2005.
In addition to being the top breadwinner in the Obama family due to her position at the University of Chicago, Michelle also gave birth during that time to two daughters, Malia in 1998 and Natasha, known as Sasha, in 2001.
Michelle Obama helped her husband get elected to the Senate in 2004. She campaigned with him while still trying to maintain as normal a life as possible with her daughters and raising them.
When Barack Obama ran for president in 2008, Michelle took a leave of absence from her work to help with the campaign and still have time for her kids. Michelle Obama officially became the 44th First Lady of the United States when her husband was sworn in as president on January 20th, 2009.
She was extremely effective in a number of her initiatives as First Lady, including Let's Move, which was a program focused on eradicating childhood obesity through fitness, as well as her extraordinary work in supporting military personnel and their families.
Michelle Obama, in a time of extreme partisan politics, has found issues that both parties can agree on and that really bring people together.
During Barack Obama's 2012 re-election run, Michelle Obama traveled the country to support him and played an important role in his success. She was so popular and effective on the stump, she earned the nickname the Closer.
Michelle Obama is a phenomenon in the White House. She has managed to navigate the racial divide in this country, the gender divide, and the demands that she do something meaningful.
Michelle Obama is a popular First Lady. She was clearly a good mother, clearly a good wife. Her husband clearly listened to her, and she was a vigorous, attractive presence.
It's hard to know what Michelle Obama will do after the White House. She has the experience, the temperament, the education, and the visibility to assume importance in many sectors.
All right. And what did she do after the White House is she has become an amazing author. Her first book, Belonging, did exceptionally well. And this latest book is getting a lot of attention from some pretty major publishers out there. Hold on one second, you guys, I'm gonna get back to our PowerPoint. Okay, here we go. All right, so I thought that would be nice. And you can't talk about Michelle without talking about Barack. And I just think they have a wonderful love story. We'll get to that chapter next time. We're not going to get to that one in this example. But another thing about, like I said, she could do many things after the White House. She has a popular podcast that I enjoy listening to, and she is a well sought out keynote speaker. We had a conference and we inquired just for the heck of it to see, and boy, does she cost a pretty penny. I can't remember now, but it was maybe $80,000 to get her to come, and we definitely could not afford that. But she is amazing, and her book just really speaks to who she is. So just a summary of what The Light We Carry is. Michelle herself describes it as a collection of practices and perspectives that she draws upon herself. So she's kind of given us an insight into her own personal self-help. She uses the things that she shares in this book when she needs to be balanced and confident, when she's anxious and stressed, because the book is The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. And she wrote it because of us still coming out of the pandemic and just the struggles that she faced during that time. In the introduction, she adds that this book will guide readers with the tools that she's providing us with tools throughout this book, attitudes and beliefs that she learned on her ongoing journey to becoming. And we know Becoming was the title of her first book. So I wanted to just read this quote that's right at the beginning of the book. After the dedication page, she wrote, if someone, or she shared, she didn't write it, if someone in your family tree was troubled, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally. No matter how loud they are, we simply would not be here if that were so. You are made fundamentally from the good with this knowledge. You never march alone. You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. And that was Alberto Rios from A House Called Tomorrow. I find that to just be beautiful, that even though we've had struggles, we have to believe in ourselves that we might have had 100 bad people on our family tree, someone bad, but 100 of them weren't. You got to look at the good and the bad and really focus on the good. And that she said, you are made fundamentally from the good in people. She's always looking for the good in others. So I have a question from that quote. She put that right at the beginning of her book, right after her dedication. Are we fundamentally good? What do you guys think? What do you hold her philosophy? That even though you may have had some bad apples on the tree, well, you had 100 more that were good apples. And we are fundamentally more good than evil. She's trying to help us to see that. What do you guys think? I think it was poignant that she put that in the beginning of the book. It was for purpose. It was purposeful.
She just
Well, I
described
think
herself.
I think it's very good that she put that at the beginning of the book. And I think that even though there are bad in a lot of us, we all have some good. And instead of focusing completely on the bad, if we could focus on the good and help them realize that, I think there would be a lot of good that comes out of it.
Good point. If we focus on the good, we'll see more good. A lot more will come
Yes.
out. Excellent.
Yes.
Chris, you were saying?
I was just thinking of characteristics. She is doing 2 or 3 different things automatically by putting the goodness first. One, she's telling us as readers what this book is about, her goodness. 2, she put that word goodness so that we can think about what that means.
Yeah.
Not just as women,
Mhm.
not just as women of color, not just as women who are not women or first ladies, but just to remind ourselves that we are good people, that we are good in terms of being good, and not to pay attention to all of the badness that people ascribe us to be. I think right, she sets it right away. Are we all
Yeah.
fundamentally good? I think she put that out there so that we could understand what she's going to say in her writing. And she mixes good and bad in her writing, using
does.
herself as example. But she's also got a wonderful sense of humor about herself.
Isn't she? Doesn't she though? Yes.
Yes. I want to say something, Professor.
Sure, go ahead.
You mentioned that your group said that she was asking $80,000 for a presentation.
Nearly 100,000.
Oh, 100,000. Oh, okay.
80.
I didn't get that part. All right.
Oh, no, 80. No, I wish.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to get that understood.
Oh,
Only because I thought I heard 80, and I'm thinking, 80,000 is what a professor makes at a university at.
Oh, yeah.
So when you said 100, I got it.
Yes.
And Dr. Durden, I thought I heard 80,000 also, so she wanted 100,000.
No, it was 80 to 100. It was a lot, depending
80.
on how long
Oh,
I wanted her
oh,
to
okay.
speak.
Oh,
Mhm.
80 to 100. Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I was trying to go on the low end, but I was like, I couldn't afford it anyway.
Mhm. That's a lot
I
of
would
money.
I would like to speak on the good and the bad.
Yes.
I think that I am angry with the bad in my life, so angry that I'm always trying to do good.
Mm,
Rid of.
I love that. You're trying to do good to make, did you say to make it up?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And if I might, along with what Ms. Ruth just said, I think that a lot of African-American people try and do good because they know that when society is looking at them, the first thing they see is black and bad.
Mhm.
So I think what she said is right. A lot of us, we try and put the very best out there that we can on the first go around, because if you mess up the first time, you don't really get a second time.
Exactly, exactly. And see, that's just the first, not even the first page, you guys. See how poignant this woman is? She's brilliant. She's brilliant. There's so much more we could even say from her placing this in here, but we got to move
Yeah.
on.
I find it interesting that she's quoting Alberto Rios of ASU,
Yeah.
who was born in Nogales, Arizona, and he's of Mexican heritage and descent.
Yes.
But what this tells me is she's a reader of poetry.
Oh, yes, she is. Mhm.
And she remembers what she reads, and for her to select this poem is current in her reading experience, but also it's something that she too can relate to.
Right.
So
And
I
it's our
thought that was
Tempe
nice.
connection with the Tempe Museum, and Alberto is at our Tempe College. So
Yes.
yes, we get kudos. Thank you. All right, so let's hear what Michelle has to say in her own words about this phenomenal book. Can you guys see this one? Nope. Let me escape out. Sorry, I'm on the wrong video. We will get to the right one and we will hear from her. Welcome, Carol. All right, here we go.
Announcement from former First Lady Michelle Obama. She has written a new book. It's called The Light We Carry. She hopes it will help people overcome obstacles and adapt to change by sharing some of the habits she's learned and relied on over the years. Take a look.
It's been a few years since I published my memoir, Becoming, and in the time since, we've been through a lot. And I don't know about you, but it has left me feeling just a little out of balance. But with everything going on, I couldn't help but put some more of my thoughts down on paper. My book is called The Light We Carry. And I think of it as a sort of a toolbox. a collection of some of the perspectives and practices I've used over my lifetime, practices that help keep me centered, even when it feels like everything is falling apart.
All right, well, The Light We Carry is out later this year on November 15th.
There's so many with
All right. So again, she's talking about this toolbox that she's preparing for us. This toolbox that she's used herself throughout her life. And I truly did find that some of the strategies that she shared are things that I would like to impart in my own life and put into practice. So I just wanted you to hear her introduce her own book. And then let's talk about some other quotes that I found in the book that I like us to talk about. Because Michelle, I was listening to these New York critics. They did a book club on this actual book. And they were a very diverse group of critics, and they didn't want to read this book. They were like, why are we reading this book? We don't read memoirs. We read Steinbeck. We read, all of Longfellow. Why are you suggesting this book? And by the end of the talk, they were all just so enamored by her brilliance and the universal truths that she shared in this book, and that she's such an awesome writer. Her husband won a Pulitzer. I believe one will be for her. She's going to keep writing. I think she's a really good writer. So that's my prediction. But this is one of her quotes. She says, I believe that each of us carries a bit of inner brightness, something entirely unique and individual, a flame that's worth protecting. When we are able to recognize our own light, we become empowered to use it. When we learn to foster what's unique in the people around us, we become better able to build compassionate communities and make meaningful change. That's, again, she's talking about that inner brightness. Anyone, just from reading that, what resonates with you from what she is telling us, encouraging us to know or to understand?
One of the examples that she gives early, and she finally comes to terms with this characteristic of hers that she finds maybe in a negative way. The fact that she was already 5'9" in the 6th grade. And the fact that she was tall and she couldn't cope with being so tall. But she later realized that she wasn't going to change the fact that she was 5'9".
No.
And she dealt with it in different ways. Yes, she couldn't become the gymnast like Nadia Comaneci.
Right.
So she became a student of ballet. No, she couldn't change the fact that she was the tallest in a picture because of the fact that that's where the teacher placed her, in the middle, being so tall. She couldn't change that. So along the way, she gives example of being 5'9", but here she deals with being 5'9", and it becomes something positive later. She doesn't have to worry about it because it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if she's 5'9". It doesn't matter to anybody else. So it shouldn't matter to her that she thinks it's something negative. So I think in the beginning, she's already dealing with the conflict within herself, not liking herself, maybe.
Yeah.
Or not feeling confident in herself, thinking that others are making fun of her, not maybe perhaps liking the teacher, for maybe the teacher who might have made her stand out. Anyway, in the beginning, right away, she deals with this negativeness about her that she feels, and she puts it in her book that she was already 5'9" in the 6th grade.
Right. Excellent example. And she does she's very transparent and talks about her downfalls. We're going to talk about another one of her quotes later when she looks in the mirror in the morning. Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Anyone else, what resonates for you? When we're able to recognize our own light, we become empowered to use it. When we learn to foster what's unique in the people around us, we become better able to build compassionate communities and make meaningful change.
I have another example, Professor.
Sure.
When she talks about her father and the fact that he has multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
And she writes about him in the beginning, early stages of MS, and how the family deals with it. but more importantly, how
He did.
how he deals with it so that it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect him because he's still working and earning a living and providing for the family. But she and her brother notice when they're children, when they're very, very young, that they have to help their father and their mother, but more importantly, to try and understand the kind of dealings that her father has to go through during this period of time, dealing with incapacities, walking. First, he has a cane, a walker, and then a walker, and then a wheelchair. Maybe he can't speak clearly or later on, but she writes about him, and she doesn't. She brings him into her story.
She does.
Yes,
It's very important.
yes.
I love that. And that's another really good example. And she said how her father, he never let that hold him back.
No.
He still went to work. He still worked hard. He did not use it as an excuse.
No.
She said that he never used that as an excuse.
No.
He continued on. He
Right.
continued
I
on.
think without her father and that example, her life may have turned out totally different, because with having the father she had and him showing her how to overcome adversities and things in life, she was able to move ahead of adversities that she found. She had someone to reflect back on in a positive way. He showed her positively how to handle whatever situation he was in. He always came out on the positive side.
That's excellent. I want each of you to do something for me. Just think for a minute, who was that example for you when you were growing up? Who taught you how to overcome?
My mother,
Mm.
she was sickly, and she would say, "This is the way you make oatmeal." And I always felt so pleased that I could do it.
Yes.
And try to, and I was pleased enough to even follow her instruction on how to make that oatmeal, so
Wonderful.
that it was pleasant for
Pleasant.
others.
Beautiful. Thank you. Your mama.
Yes,
Mhm.
Mom
was that one.
yes, that always encouraged me.
Mhm.
And if I didn't do it right, I might get a whipping. And that is encouragement.
Yeah, it is. Motivated me a lot. Anyone else?
I think for my parents' generation, they were the generation of the GI generation, born in the 20s, coming from a family of Mexican immigrants across the border, with parents who went through various stages of racism themselves because of being Mexican. But they were of that GI generation when my father was drafted into service. Their example of giving us examples of strength, and their example was President Franklin D. Roosevelt, because he, despite having polio, and despite being in a wheelchair, would present himself to the nation standing up with crutches.
That's right.
Or standing up with braces. And he was telling us, or me, not me so much, but my parents growing up and seeing him, they of that generation learning what is courage and strength, despite what's going on in terms of the war, because the war would affect everyone. The war would affect our family just as much as it would affect your family in that era. So for them, seeing President Roosevelt and seeing the situations in our neighborhood, seeing them going through this with the president, courage and strength. And I think that was an example for me to see and understand a national leader like President Roosevelt. I have to tell you this, in every Mexican home during this era, on the wall would be 3 portraits: the president, FDR, the Pope, and the matriarch of the family and the patriarch of the family. Those were on the walls of every Mexican family in my
Oh.
neighborhood. There you see President Roosevelt and you see the Pope.
Wow, that is good to know. Thank you, FDR.
Mhm,
Definitely. Excellent, excellent.
mhm.
Tara, how about from our generation? Who?
That's a very difficult question for me. I have to keep thinking about that because there's no big huge push from either my father or my mother, but they wouldn't allow us to have pity parties. I don't know how to feel sorry for myself. It's like there's a pride that prevents me from, thank you so much. It prevents me from, let me finish talking to my friends. Yeah. That prevents me from feeling sorry for myself. And then I think they also didn't allow us to let anything stop us. I think as a person who grew up in the 70s and 80s in the south side of Phoenix, going to the south side of Phoenix schools, and then going on to get a scholarship and then going on to work for the CIA. I mean, I think none of that phased me. Just, I want to do something, I want to try it. And so I did it. So maybe just indirectly, just not allowing us to feel sorry for ourselves.
Yep.
Maybe that was what the motivator was for me and my brother.
Oh yeah, Mrs. Colbert, there was no pity parties over there. I was the baby of the family. I cried and I sucked my bottle till I would go to kindergarten, come back home and then suck my bottle, I heard. I was a spoiled brat. We'll move on. Personal truths and philosophy from her book. She said, there's nothing easy about finding your way through a world loaded with obstacles that others can't or don't see. When you're different, you can feel as if you're operating with a different map, a different set of navigational challenges than those around you. Sometimes you feel like you have no map at all. Your differentness will often precede you into a room. People see it before they see you, which leaves you with the task of overcoming. I think we can relate to that as women of color. I've a lot of times been the only, she writes about that, being the only in so many situations, or the first, or the only. What resonates with you all from this quote? Loaded with obstacles. Look, she says that your differences often precede you into a room. People see it before they see you. Oh, she's the Black girl. Oh, she's the Latina girl. Oh, she's the new woman. Or she's the female boss. They don't even know you by name as Ruth or Chris or Tara or Joanne.
And when they see you that way, they judge you by the ideas that they have been fed by others, or ideas that they have developed from seeing others act ways that you don't. But because you fit into that little class or peg hole, they judge you by what someone has told them. And it doesn't mean that that's who you are, because they don't know you yet, but they've already judged you when they see you.
Yes, yes, so true. I think we've all experienced that, just as women and women of color on top of that. I love the way she writes it. You know, how do you navigate? It's not easy. When you're operating from a different map or different set of navigational challenges than those around you. They don't see what you see. They don't feel what you feel. But you have to persevere. You have to keep going on. I just really, really love this quote. It's so packed. There's so many layers to it. But this is just an example of her philosophy. She even puts her philosophy in this self-help memoir. It's awesome. It's awesome. All right, we'll move on.
But there's also a challenge there, Professor, which leaves you or us with the task of overcoming.
Oh yeah, we got to overcome. That's why she's encouraging us, because we do have to overcome every day, every day. Yeah, there is a challenge. We're gonna dig in. I think this is a beautiful picture of her. And she's just like, okay, let's get going. That was our last thing. I love her in blue. We're gonna go on her first chapter, The Power of Small. Does anyone knit on here? Is anyone a knitter?
I crochet.
Okay, okay. So maybe you'll understand this analogy a little bit better than I do.
Right, and I did teach myself to knit when I was pregnant with my first child. But I found that I like crocheting better because knitting seemed to be more.
Mhm.
And then, you know, with that one crochet hook, I could go, but with knitting, I had to be.
Right. You got it. So she became a knitter during COVID, and I thought that was funny reading about her knitting. But she's The Power of
You know,
Small.
when I read that, I thought, wow, I never would have thought of her as
Me
someone who
either.
knit.
Oh, I thought that was really interesting.
Yes.
So on page 48 in the book, it says, in knitting, when you create the first stitch of a new project, you cast on. When an item is finished, you bind it off. Both of these actions I found are incredibly satisfying. The bookends of something manageable and finite. They give me a sense of completion in a world that will always and forever feel chaotic and incomplete. Anytime your circumstances start to feel all-consuming, I suggest you try going in the other direction, toward the small. What is she talking about there? She's giving us a tip, and I've never knit anything in my life. I wish I could just understand that, but what is the power of small? What resonated to you in this book? She talked about her father, which we've mentioned in this chapter. What is the power of small?
It's like in Spanish, the phrase chiquita pero picosa, small but mighty. Small but mighty. It describes everything in our lives, from feeling small or made to feel small, but we gather our strength and we build up our strength and we become mighty.
Yes.
Or someone is described as when you're growing up, you're short and you don't become 5'9" like she does. And so you're ridiculed or teased because you're little or you're short. But then you rise above being short to become mighty, small but mighty.
Yes, small but mighty.
Yeah. So I think if you go the other direction, small, there is strength in being small, and in our smallness, we then grow to become mighty.
Right.
I don't
You
know.
got to start as a small seed and grow up, right?
Yeah.
We don't despise our small beginning.
Yeah.
Anyone else? When
think
you
also, I think also with the power of small, just the overwhelm of the world and all the things she had to overcome while she was in the White House, everything with COVID. I think she just reminding us with whatever big thing we're facing, whatever thing that threatens to overwhelm us, you got to find something you can hold on to that brings you a stitch of joy or some sort of victory or some low-hanging fruit where you're like, you know what? COVID's out of control, but I learned how to start making recipes and we're having family dinners every night. And that makes me good. And that gives me courage to wake up in the morning again and still face this. Or my child is doing horribly in school, but when we get home, we cuddle and we drink hot chocolate, or we find a way to connect still. And I remind them that we're going to get through this. The power small to me is like finding something inside your world that anchors you, because this world is big and chaotic and scary and overwhelming. She talked about how this knitting got her to do that Democratic National Convention speech. She had to
That's right. That's right.
To be confident to say, you know what? That was a good bind you just did on that. And then she sit in there in that room where she didn't have any feedback on her speech and say, I'm just going to speak my truth. I feel confident to do so.
Yeah.
And she
beautiful.
Something we can anchor ourselves to, I think, is what she's
I
getting.
agree. Beautiful example. Yes.
Yeah.
I have to believe in myself when I become small.
Yeah.
And I have to make myself big if I'm in a crowd that looks at me as being small.
How do you make yourself big? What do you do?
I just believe in myself
Yes.
that I can do that,
Do this. Mm-hmm.
that I can make this thing work.
Positive self-talk. Yeah. Belief.
When the COVID was a problem, that was what I had to say to myself.
Mhm.
This is what I believe, and this is the way I'm going to handle it. And I'm going to be pleased with the way I do it.
Yes.
I'm not going to try to make it anything else but the way that I see I can do it.
It's awesome.
And so when I said to my children, if I get COVID, give me a tent and a piece of bread and some water. And if it's time for me to die, that's God's way of taking me out of here. But if it's time for me to live, that's his way of keeping me here.
Mm. Thank
So
you.
I'm not going to be smallly put under no circumstances, because I'm going to have a bigger way to handle it.
I love that. You just gave me a really good chill. That's beautiful. Thank you. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Power of small. I think, if anything, you guys, with this book, just I'm a self-help book group. I don't know, hound. I don't know what we would call it. I love them. I read them all the time, but this is different. But what I like to do with books like this is find something out of this chapter that I can incorporate into my own life. So when you start to feel small, like Miss Ruth just gave us an excellent example. When you feel fear, and she talks about fear a lot in here because she's writing about overcoming in uncertain times, pandemic, war, etc. What small thing can you do? What is your small power that can help you get through? I think that's really important that we have that as a tool in our toolbox.
Amen.
Think about that, and maybe when we come back, we'll talk about that when we revisit it, and maybe you can give an example of how you used your the power of small to get through something. I have something coming up, a speech, so I'm going to try the power of small. I'm not going to take up knitting though. But I'm going to try something.
I think that knitting for me was too slow.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the idea of spending my time at that.
I'm shocked that she could do it. I mean, that must have just really slowed her down. I mean, wow, that was different.
I actually am not surprised. It's such an extreme, but she probably absolutely needed it. I mean,
she had to do it, huh?
Had to. She's in the White House and she's feeling grades of depression. Absolutely. And the conditions of our country and feeling responsible, like, oh, should we have done more? Feeling that kind of weight on your shoulders, like, we put our country in the hands of this. What happened? What did we do wrong? All those questions she was asking in the book that were weighing on her. I think that absolutely does not surprise me that it's almost like a person who becomes this devoted yoga person, like, because they completely have to quiet their mind.
I could do yoga. I could be a yogi.
When you're knitting,
yeah.
When you're knitting, you're focusing on that moment and what's in front of you, and so it would be a way for her to relax, because you're so busy trying to keep your stitches in place and reading what you have to do next, that it relieved her mind from the White House for a while.
Maybe I should take it up then. Okay, can you teach me, Miss Joy? I don't know about no knitting. Oh my goodness. So it keeps you in the moment. See, my mom sewed, she didn't knit. She would make hand quilts. Is it kind of the same? But no.
It's the same thing, because with quilting, and I quilt sometimes, but with quilting, I got to make sure that I've got my pieces placed right and everything's in line. And so I'm focusing on that. And with
Okay.
knitting, she had to make sure she did the knit and purl and cast over and all of that and get it in the
Oh,
right
okay.
place. And
Okay.
so it removed her from all this hectic stuff over here for a while, and she could just relax into her knitting.
Wow. Yeah, she had to. Good point. Tara, thank you. And Joanne, thank you. All right. The next chapter is called Decoding Fear. The Fear Monster. I love that chapter. She says, anytime I hear the patter of negativity and self-criticism starting to get loud in my brain, my doubts begin to build. I try to pause for a moment and call it as I see it. I've been practicing stepping back and addressing my fear with familiarity, offering no more than a half-friendly shrug and a few easy words. Oh, hello, it's you again. Thanks for showing up, for making me so alert, but I see you. You're not no monster to me. I love that. She hits the fear. She acknowledges it. I see you there. You know, you can't pretend you're not afraid. I think that's not healthy. She acknowledges it, but she conquers it. Thoughts on this chapter? Anything that stood out to you in decoding fear? And that was one of my favorite. I just found my little favorite quotes in each chapter is what I did.
Well, if you remember in her early career as the first lady or in her early life, she was already subjected right away to negativity by the media.
Yeah.
And they criticized her all the time.
All the time.
And she even had to explain what she meant when she said something the media didn't like because she was white, not white, or she was unpatriotic, or she didn't belong to the perfect religion, or her husband was this and her husband was that. She was trying to defend him at the same time being criticized because her children were little and she maybe was criticized for not being a good mother. I don't know.
Right.
But she met the criticism so early as a first lady and had to develop sort of a defense to fight it. All of this criticism coming from different places and different people and different groups. And that didn't overwhelm her as easily as they thought it would. But at the same time, she already recognized that this is going to happen. So if this is going to happen, I better be ready. I'm going to have a mechanism to fight all of this negativity. I don't want to get my husband in trouble. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I don't want to get my kids or my mother in trouble. So I better, you know, get myself ready and be myself. But at the same time, let's not worry about the bad stuff and just do the best I can. So
Good. Excellent examples. True. She had a lot of negativity. My goodness, the poor woman couldn't do anything without being on the cover of one of those tabloids.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Comedians made millions making fun of her, memes and things. Just horrible.
Saying terrible things in the media.
Terrible
about
thing.
her. Yeah.
Oh, terrible thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Others decoding fear. When you decode something, you break it down.
I love that story that she told about how when she was in kindergarten, her mom told her she had to walk home from school. I was like, what the heck? As a mom of a 4-year-old, I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Walk home from school.
Walk home.
But I wrote down a quote. I forgot that we were having this, but I've been collecting quotes as I read it. And she talked about how she has learned to coexist peacefully with jeopardy. So meaning she, like saying, I see you, fear, you're no monster to me, is learning how to peacefully coexist with the fact there's always going to be some level of fear in your life because it's the unknown. And so she said, if I prevent my daughter from feeling fear, I ultimately prevent her from feeling competence.
Yeah. You got to feel fear.
How are we going to feel the joy of overcoming it if we don't feel it? So you can't be against it. You can't be like, oh my God, I'm weak, I feel fear. No, it's like, okay, I see you. You're not a monster. You're right here with me. I'm going to walk through this, even though you're apparently going to be my companion
throughout life.
I'm not intimidated by you.
Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's another example of her mother.
I love her mom, by the way.
How her mother dealt with the police assuming that her brother stole the bicycle he was riding
Mm.
in a different
Yeah.
neighborhood because the bicycle was a gift and the bicycle was not your typical gang
Mhm.
biker. He got in trouble, he got arrested because the police officer assumed that he stole the bike.
Yeah.
And so the mother, her mother, not only had to deal with the fact that her son was mistreated because of race, but the fact that this officer who represents his justice or whatever assumed that he was a bad guy, that he was a gangbuster. And her mother, I think, gave her a good example of how to deal with this kind of assumption,
Mhm.
and how the mother defended, and she was seeing her brother being defended. Her brother was just riding a bike.
Right.
How innocent is that? Well, it didn't turn out to be so innocent. But she gave us an example in her writing about how strong her mother was and what an example her mother became to her in defending what is right versus what you would think is wrong.
Right.
Anyway, I just remembered that
No,
story.
that's a good story. They're
Yeah.
all excellent. Her choice.
Yeah.
Her choices are fabulous. Thanks, Chris. Thanks. Anyone else? Because go ahead, Ms.
Well,
Ruth.
being afraid of something, you have to be prepared for that.
Mhm.
And if you are prepared, you know exactly how to deal with that fear. Is move on without it and do what you have to do.
Mhm. Do it scared, right?
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see myself as a little girl having to do things, walk my brother to school, and it rained one time, and my dad had a pole across the creek for us to go across the creek, but the water was never, it was shallow. And then one day it came a big rain in Texas, and the water was up to the pole.
Mm.
And now we've got to get across there. So I go across, and my brother is back there hollering, crying, I can't do it. I can't. And I have to say, you can do it.
Yeah.
And you better do it.
Right.
Get down there and get it done. All across that pole.
And
So
that's, oh, yeah. Sometimes we have to crawl across those poles. I do it daily. It's scary world, scary stuff out here sometimes that we have to do. But now we can decode the fear. So think about how you can decode fear in your life, because we're going to face it. You know, do we have to do things to, I like the quote that Tara shared. How can, if you don't, read it again, Tara, one more time for us.
well, it seems to me that my mother always prepared us
Yeah.
how
She prepared
to
you for it.
face fear.
Mm-hmm. She didn't protect you.
If there was a mad dog in our trail, what was we supposed to do? Get out of his way and let him pass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you're growing up, you are taught how to deal with fear.
Right. Right. That's the training ground.
And that's how Michelle was being taught when
Right.
she had to walk to school.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you don't get rid of that. You keep that.
Keep it. You keep it. Sometimes as we get older, we get more fearful. Young kids are more brave. Now, when we get older, it's like, we, start to shrink back. But Tara, read that quote for us one more time, please.
Yeah. If I prevent my daughter from feeling fear, I ultimately prevent her from also feeling competence.
Yeah. So she made that analogy there in the connection between fear and competence. Love it.
Yeah.
Remember that the next time you feel fear, talk
Mhm.
to it. Oh, you again? Thanks for showing up and making me so alert, but I see you. You're no monster to me. So I'm going to write that down, put it on my mirror. All right. Our next chapter is starting kind, kindness, kindness. She says, I personally have plenty of mornings when I flip on the bathroom light, take one look and desperately want to flip it off again. Face to face with myself, I impulsively start in on cataloging my flaws, seeing only what's dry and puffy, recognizing only the parts of me that could and should be better. Anybody else do that sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Look at this, look at that. I remember today, I'm like, oh, gotta be kind to yourself, right? Gotta do that positive self-talk. Thoughts on this chapter and just on starting kind. I love this one.
I just love that example where she said her friend, I'm thinking she changed the names, but her husband who talks in the mirror to himself every day, like he's talking to a friend. Hey buddy, let's have a good day.
Yeah.
That there are scientific studies that are done about how you talk to yourself makes a big difference in the way that your self-esteem is, and that's a technique. And he's talking to himself first thing in the morning in the mirror. And I just thought it was funny, but also like, oh my gosh, it always seems like when people do that, they're being arrogant, but it's not arrogance, it's kindness. It is starting with kind. It's leading with kindness first with yourself. It does allow you to be kinder to other people. I'm not upset. I didn't start my day hating my cellulite or hating that my ears are this or that. I like myself. So I go out into this world and I automatically jump to conclusions about people who are having a bad day. Oh, you're just having a bad day. Okay, I get it. I get it. I was subbing the other day and I go into an environment where it's like, I don't know what these kids are going to say to me. I don't know how things are going to go. That I got to stay safe. I got to keep them safe. And so sometimes you have incidents. I'm explaining an assignment to a girl who I feel like she's full of anxiety. She just walked in with it. And then I was explaining it. And then she just in the middle of the class just said, what the F are you talking about? Like as if what I was saying to her was just, she couldn't understand it at all. But I realized because I'm kind to myself and I'm not affected by her criticism, she's having a bad morning. That's it. She didn't start with kind. Something else has triggered her to feel like the world is falling apart and that she wants to cuss about an English assignment. When we start with kind, it gives us a power to deal with the world in a better way. And so I wasn't like angry at her at all.
No,
or making a show of things. She's just not feeling good about herself, and it's just showing up in the way that she's responding in class. She didn't start with kind. She doesn't know how. Probably doesn't like herself very much.
Good. Good. Thank you, Tara. Excellent. Excellent. You guys, we need to look at that and that self-talk. I remember there was a Saturday Night Live skit. I like that show, but I think it was, I'm okay, you're okay. And he was looking in the mirror, and we used to make fun of that in the 70s and 80s. But like she was saying, there is scientific research out there that our self-talk, that inner talk, it's there all the time. Whether we realize it or not, we are talking to ourselves. There are messages there. And I love that she put this in the book. It also shows her vulnerability that Chris had talked about in the beginning, that she has the same struggles that we do, that she has fears. She has insecurities. She talks about it. Coming more in the book, we're going to hear more about those. But you got to start with the kindness, and it starts first here. So be kind to yourselves. We're going to do that too. So we're going to learn something else, right? So we're going to, the power of small, we're going to find our small, we're going to decode our fear, we're going to talk to it, and we're going to be kind to ourselves. Okay, then the last one, am I seen? And we talked about this already a bit. In this one, she says, I was never and only, this is when she was in Chicago. It wasn't until I arrived at college that I got my first real taste of racial invisibility. Are we seen? Another very poignant point and chapter. Thoughts on this chapter? What stood out? Have you ever felt like you don't matter? She says, that you exist in a world that doesn't see you. Everywhere I go, I meet people who tell me they're struggling to be accepted as themselves, whether it's at school, at work, or inside a larger community. They describe the self-consciousness that comes with feeling like you don't belong in the space you're in. It's something I've known and lived with much of my life.
Well, being part of and getting a taste of racial invisibility also means that people are going to make assumptions about you because you're part of that group now.
Yeah.
You don't stand out anymore. They're going to assume that you're just like them because you are them, because you look like them, because you have the same color as them, because you have the same hairstyle as them, because you look like them, then you're going to be like them. You're not going to stick out
Yeah.
in a white crowd anymore.
Right.
And so that says to her that she got this first taste of racial invisibility. She then realized that she was already going to be it was already going to be assumed that she was no better than anybody else,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or that she was just like everybody else.
Right.
A black woman.
Right.
Anyway, I thought that was
Wait.
interesting about being an only, because
An
she had always been an only. She was the only girl in the 6th grade who was 5'9".
Mm-hmm.
She was the only girl taking ballet, only black girl taking ballet lessons. She was the
Right.
only girl in her neighborhood as a young girl walking to school by herself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about examples that she gave, but you
Oh,
could
yeah, there are
see that
countless.
she was the only
Mhm.
one. Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. When can you guys share a time when you were an only and how did it feel?
I was an only when my brothers grew up and went to school because of sports scholarship, because I
Mhm.
was such a tomboy with my brothers, my older brothers, my 4 brothers. And because of them, I became so independent, but at the same time, they took care of me and gave me life's lessons.
Mhm.
So when they left, grew up, and I was alone, and I have younger siblings, but when I was just me being by myself without my brothers, I felt like I was the only girl who didn't have brothers anymore.
Mhm.
Because all of my friends who were girls,
Mhm.
it wasn't that I didn't grow up with them, it was just they didn't have brothers. They weren't tomboys like me.
Right.
And so I had to be with them, and they were not sports minded, or they weren't tomboys like me. So I was the only girl
Mhm.
my little street of girls who didn't have a doll to play with, because I didn't want a doll. I had a catcher's mitt. Uh, who who didn't play jacks because it was a girls' game. I did play jacks. I was playing ball with my brothers, so I was the only girl who wasn't like the girl.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. I grew up with a bunch of nephews. I was often the only girl. Excellent. Tara, how about you? A time when you were the only.
Like, I I've always been the only, and I think at some level I protected myself, pretend like I wasn't. And it maybe became more of an issue as I went into older as corporate America, the only in that way, and fighting to be seen and to be heard, and then getting angry and frustrated by that experience. I think that I was in denial maybe most of my life, but it wasn't until I became an adult and I realized, yeah, it's true.
It's true.
You have all this education, all these degrees, but you still aren't seen. You
Yeah.
still only.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
still don't see.
Mhm.
I can resonate with that one.
Mhm.
Good. Joanne, you have one?
You know, when I was reading the book, I was trying to come up with just one. There's been so many times when I've been the only. And I don't have one specific one, I don't think, except when back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was a member of the Epsilon Sigma Alpha philanthropic sorority as part
Yes.
of AKA. And I was the only African American in the group, you know, and so I always felt like I had to act and be a certain way. But then one day I was sitting on the couch, my husband and I were talking about something, he was having some issues. And so I said something, he said, oh, how would you know? You just always fit in and you just go along with the group. They don't see you as different from them. And I thought, I wonder why not. I never knew which way I was supposed to be acting, and so I just acted myself. And I always wanted to be like the group. I didn't want to stand out and be different.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and
That's a good
my
point.
grandmother had always taught me also when we were growing up. She said, if you run with dogs that's got a lot of fleas, you're gonna become just like them. So you want to raise yourself above down the level below. You always want to strive for the top. And so I think that's what I was always doing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. You said something that really resonated with me, that because I was always the only, I went to private schools, etc. I mean, just my entire life. But you want to fit in. So then you're
Yes.
not, I wasn't really seen because I wasn't really being me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to be what I thought was going to be appropriate to fit into that group. That
the group,
sorority,
yes.
or that key club, or this or that, this club.
Yes.
So then I could be me. I was seen at home, but I almost didn't want to be seen because I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to just be like one of the other girls. It reminds me of the show, The Facts of Life. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that show, but I always was intrigued by it because I felt like I was Tootie a lot of the time. I get it, Tootie. Because Tootie, she was a Tootie. And I could say I, for many years, was a Tootie. And I think I don't have to say any more than that.
So you mean there was a time when I was a Tootie and didn't know it?
You were a Tootie. You were a Tootie. Or a Lisa Turtle on that other show.
No. Well, guess what? I do collect turtles.
Oh, okay. So, am I seen? So, I mean, her book is just beautiful, beautiful. Well, that was our last chapter, and I see we're a little, oh no, my kitchen table. I'm gonna actually save that one because that's actually in part 2. So we won't have the background information. We'll have more time to get to that one next time. But our next meeting is on the 22nd at 5 o'clock. That'll be our next meeting, and we'll finish this wonderful book. Did you guys enjoy it tonight? I really did.
Oh, sure.
I think it was good to get our perspectives. Tara, was it?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was awesome. I think we can learn from this book. Trevor Noah, you guys familiar with him? One of the things he had said on his last show was, we need to listen to the voices of African-American women because their stories need to be told. And Michelle Obama's book, I think, is really important because she tells it from a perspective of African-American woman, upper middle class, went to the top as far as we're concerned. She was the first lady of the United States, but we can relate to her as women here and her stories, and they need to be told. So I thought it was phenomenal.
Exactly.
Thank you guys so much. That was fun. Miss Ruth.
Thank you. It's nice meeting all you ladies again.
Joanne.
Tara, it's nice to meet you on Zoom.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys on the 22nd and we'll finish the book.
Chris, I'll see you at THS.
Yes, definitely. I'll be there tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm going to be I'll be zooming in with you, Joanne.
Okay.
All right.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good evening,
Bye-bye.
ladies.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Miss Ruth.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.
We love you too, Miss Ruth.